Before I tell you the country and the year that we will be visiting in today's case, I first want to introduce you to the sponsor of today's video, Matchmasters. If you haven't heard of Matchmasters, it's a multiplayer match 3 game, and in fact, it's the most popular one in the world. In Matchmasters, you can compete with friends to match pieces on the board and see who gets the highest score. Of course, if your friends are busy, you can hop into solo mode or play against people from all over the globe. I love playing after editing my true crime cases, and I especially like the incredible and unique in-game graphics. If you're a gamer like me, you'll also love the fact that there are loads of strategies to win, and you can get powerful boosters to crush your opponents. If you want an even bigger challenge, you can play Rumble, where you play against more than one person at once. There are also tons of cool events and a really fun and social team game mode, so don't miss out. Challenge your friends and family in the best multiplayer match 3 game. Download Matchmasters for free by using the link below and join me. You'll even get a special starter pack when you open the game. Now let's go to mid-19th century Brazil. José Ramos was the eldest son of Manuel Ramos and Maria da Conceição. His father had settled in Santa Catarina during the Ragamuffin War. This was a conflict that took place in Brazil between 1835 and 1845, primarily involving the southern provinces of Rio Grande do Sul and Santa Catarina. The war was driven by economic grievances among local cattle ranchers over high tariffs on their products, political discontent with the centralized power of the Brazilian Empire, and social issues related to how they were governed. The rebels, known as Farrapos, sought greater autonomy and established a republican government in Rio Grande do Sul. Despite initial success on the battlefield, winning some territorial expansion, the war ended with the Ponte Verde Treaty in 1845. This treaty granted amnesty to the rebels, along with some other concessions. However, the conflict left a lasting legacy of regional pride and autonomy, significantly shaping the cultural identity of the area. When José was young, he was always fascinated to hear his father's stories of his time as a cavalryman in the Ragamuffin War. Manuel Ramos made it sound as though he had been a fearless soldier, but the truth was somewhat different. He had in fact deserted the battalion and took refuge in Santa Catarina, a picturesque state in southern Brazil, renowned for its diverse landscapes. These include the beaches along the Atlantic coast and forested mountain areas. It was a region that during the 19th century welcomed many migrants, who mainly came from Germany, Italy and Portugal. Although as a child, José had a good relationship with his father, this deteriorated during his teenage years, mainly due to his father's increasingly violent behaviour towards his mother. The tension culminated in a heated argument, where his father physically attacked her. In a desperate attempt to protect his mother, José grabbed a knife and intervened, inflicting serious injuries on his father. These injuries proved to be fatal, and a few days later, Manuel Ramos died. Following this incident, José travelled to the city of Porto Alegre. Once there, he sought to rebuild his life and found new purpose in public service. He was determined to uphold justice and protect others from the violence he had witnessed in his own family, so he joined the local police force. Porto Alegre was a beautiful city with cobbled streets and colonial architecture. It had bustling markets and waterfront promenades full of shops, merchants and traders. The city served as a hub of commerce and culture, which reflected the diverse influences of its many European immigrants. However, José was forced to leave the police force when he was caught attempting to kill a well-known prisoner named Domingos da Costa, who had a nickname of Campara. He was a Robin Hood type figure who, according to José, had been trying to escape. Unfortunately, due to Campara's popularity and reputation as a sort of local hero who aided the poor, the incident caused a significant public outcry, and this forced the authorities to take action and discharge José from its service. Despite his dismissal, he did not sever ties with law enforcement entirely. Instead, he became a police informant, providing intelligence and inside information on criminal activities in the area. He reported directly to the chief of police, Dario Caiado. José was quite well educated and became well known in Porto Alegre's high society, where he frequently attended the city's most luxurious and sophisticated events. He was a regular at theatrical performances, operas, and social gatherings, and often visited the recently opened theatre, which had become an important cultural landmark. It was around this time that he met Katarina Palse, a woman who he shared his passion for lyrical music and poetry. Katarina came from a humble ethnic German family in the Hungarian region of Transylvania. She had spent her early years in a small village alongside her parents and two brothers, but her life had taken a harrowing turn during the Hungarian Revolution of 1848, where she had endured abuse at the hands of soldiers and witnessed the brutal murder of her entire family. Still a teenager and desperate to escape the turmoil and poverty gripping her homeland, she married a man named Peter Palse, and together they made their way to South America. However, tragedy struck Katarina once more when her husband took his own life during their journey to Brazil, leaving her to face a new and uncertain future alone. She arrived in Porto Alegre in 1857, where despite the hardships she had endured, she found resilience in her spirit and determination to forge a better future for herself. In 1863, she met José Ramos, and it soon became apparent that they got on very well together. He understood her previous struggles, and their shared experiences of hardship seemed to bring them closer. Eventually they decided to live together and found a house on Rua do Alvaredo, a quiet street near a cemetery, behind the Metropolitan Cathedral of Our Lady Mother of God. This peaceful location provided them with a stable and tranquil environment to start their new life together. Near the house that José shared with Katarina lived a man named Karl Clausner. Karl had come to Brazil from Germany in 1859 and owned a very successful butcher's shop. His success had been due to his skill as a butcher and the quality of his products, as well as the shop's location, near an area where many German immigrants resided. But despite his success, he was unmarried and often seemed to be quite lonely. José, having learned some German, enjoyed talking with Karl, mainly to practice the language, and because he found him to be an interesting character. Their conversation eventually led Karl offering José a position at his shop, a proposal that José readily accepted. Under Karl's mentorship, José learned the skills of a butcher and soon understood the intricacies of the trade. The seemingly ordinary life of José Ramos took a sinister turn when he and Katarina began plotting to befriend people who were new to the city, then rob and murder them. As Katarina did not speak very much Portuguese, it was agreed that she would target German immigrants, as they were easier to communicate with and manipulate. Once a suitable victim was chosen, she would employ her charm and seduction skills and invite them back to the house that she shared with José. Upon arrival, the victims were quickly subdued and their belongings were stolen. But what followed was a scene of unimaginable horror. The victims were beheaded, dismembered, and their skin stripped. In order to dispose of their bodies, the meat was then ground into sausages, which were sold at the butcher's shop. This grotesque operation made Karl Clausner an accomplice and turned what was a respected and well-known business establishment into a macabre and chilling place. The shop's reputation for quality meat now concealed a gruesome secret, as customers unwittingly consumed the remains of those who had been killed by the murderous trio. The remaining bones were either dissolved in acids or incinerated in the shop's furnace, ensuring that no trace of any victim was left behind. By mid-August 1863, there had been a mysterious series of disappearances in the city, which had started to cause much concern amongst the residents. The authorities had to act, so instructed the police to thoroughly investigate the matter. However, despite this, the gruesome murders continued. As they did, the possible repercussions began to weigh heavily on Karl Klausner's mind. He grew increasingly anxious about the mounting disappearances and the potential that his crimes may be discovered. Although he had initially been a willing participant in the heinous acts, he started to fear the consequences. His unease led him to contemplate fleeing to Uruguay, and after much thought, he eventually told José that he was dissatisfied with his life in Porto Alegre and that he was now going to leave. Although José was aware of the police efforts to solve the mysterious disappearances, and that Karl was very much part of the grisly crimes, he worried that if he did indeed go to Uruguay, which was outside the jurisdiction of Brazilian law enforcement, he may somehow contact the police in Porto Alegre and try to blame everything on him and Katarina. Therefore, Karl Klausner would be free, while they would probably be hanged. José decided that he could not afford to take that risk, so one night, driven by a mix of desperation and fear, he confronted him. The confrontation quickly turned violent, and José murdered his friend. With Karl Klausner now dead, José and Katarina took control of the butcher's shop. This seemed to work out quite well. People would ask them where Karl had gone, but José and Katarina had concocted a simple story to explain their friend's sudden disappearance. They said that he had simply moved away and sold them the business and the house. This falsehood allowed them to continue their operations, at least temporarily. However, they soon realised that the absence of their now deceased friend was starting to cause problems, as it was his skill and knowledge that had made the butcher's shop such a success. Without his meticulous attention to detail and proficiency in butchery, the quality of the products began to decline, and with José and Katarina lacking the necessary experience, they struggled to maintain the high standards that had once attracted so many customers, who now began to go elsewhere, and the previously bustling store saw a marked decline in revenue. Not every customer believed their story, and rumours swiftly spread regarding Karl Klausner's mysterious fate. Had he really just sold his house and business and left the city without telling anyone? Speculation and distrust had already started to permeate within the community, which only exacerbated an already volatile situation. The facade that had temporarily masked José and Katarina's control over the shop proved unsustainable. Their mismanagement became increasingly apparent, and the very foundation of their operation began to crumble under the scrutiny from both local people and the authorities. This was coupled with whispers linking the new shop owners to the unsettling disappearances. However, things took a turn when two more men suddenly went missing. José Ignacio de Sousa Avila, who was a travelling salesman, and Januario Martins da Silva, who was a merchant from Portugal, both suddenly disappeared. When the police started to investigate, they discovered that both men were last seen entering the home of José Ramos. On the 18th of April 1864, José was summoned to the police station for questioning. He calmly told officers that the men had indeed stayed overnight in his house, but had departed early the next morning, bound for São Sebastião do Caí. However, the inspectors did not believe his answers and ordered a thorough search of José's home. What officers then uncovered was beyond comprehension. Hidden in the basement, amidst the damp and darkness, were scattered remains of decomposing human bodies and evidence of unspeakable violence. Among them were personal belongings of the missing men, chillingly kept as trophies by José. One of the bodies was found in an advanced state of decomposition. It was later identified to be the body of Karl Klausner, the owner of the butcher's shop. The horror escalated when the police discovered more gruesome finds. In a nearby well lay the dismembered bodies of Januario and José Ignacio, along with Ignacio's dog, who had also been killed. As the investigation deepened, another figure emerged, Katarina Palse. She was already in police custody, having previously been arrested for an unrelated crime. When the police spoke to her, she broke down and confessed the horrifying truth. She revealed that 6 men had met their deaths within the Ramos house, their bodies callously transformed into sausages by the owner of the butcher's shop, a man named Karl Klausner, who she claimed had escaped to Uruguay. When police investigated the clientele who would have purchased these sausages, they realised that they were mostly the well-to-do and affluent members of society, known for their refined tastes and social standing. Katarina told officers that in all the cases, José had killed the men as he wanted to rob them. However, she confirmed that José Ignacio had discovered what they were doing, so he killed him to prevent him from informing the authorities. Both José Ramos and Katarina Palse were charged with murder. The trial that followed was a spectacle of justice and corruption. The chief of police, Dario Collado, under pressure due to his own compromised dealings with José Ramos, who he had employed as an informant, hurriedly pushed the case forward to avoid any further scandal. Although José denied all the charges against him, he was quickly found guilty on multiple counts of robbery and murder and sentenced to hang. Katarina Palse was also tried for the crimes. She told the court that it was in fact Karl Klausner who had first suggested the idea of using human meat in sausages to cover up the murders. She said that this method proved to be shockingly efficient in disposing of the bodies without raising any immediate suspicion. The court concluded that she was an accomplice to the horrors, but less directly involved. She therefore received a lesser sentence of 13 years in prison. The case, despite its horrific nature, received limited coverage in Porto Alegre, but gained international attention, becoming a chilling tale of human depravity and the fragile facade of civility. José appealed his sentence, and under Brazilian law at the time, was granted a second trial. He was again found guilty and again sentenced to death. He continued to appeal, and his punishment was later commuted to life imprisonment. Katarina completed her 13 years of incarceration before being released in 1877. José Ramos was never released. He died in 1893 at the Santa Casa de Misericordia Hospital and always maintained that he was an innocent man. The dark legacy of José Ramos and his accomplices remains a haunting reminder of the depth of which human nature can sink, and though the reasons behind his descent into violence remain speculative, many believe that it was economic gain and a morbid fascination with death that were the probable motives. However, whatever the reasons, their actions left Porto Alegre forever scarred by the atrocities committed within its midst. I would once again like to thank Matchmasters for sponsoring today's video, and in order to download the game, either use the QR code or click on the link in the description. As usual, please leave any comments or feedback you may have, and I hope to see you all again in the next brief case.